There's a new term floating around, womanosphere. The Guardian breaks it down in an article titled, "Now Comes the Womanosphere, the anti-feminist media telling women to be thin, fertile, and Republican." The Guardian says womanosphere includes The Brett Cooper Show, lifestyle magazines like The Conservator and Evie, Candace Owens' Club Candace, and Alex Clark's Culture Apothecary, to name a few. The article also writes, while the women behind these outlets all have different styles and tactics, they are mostly aligned in their desire to return to a gender essentialist worldview. Women as submissive homemakers, men as strong providers.
A similar rhetoric floated around after the 2024 presidential election, where the term manosphere was used for a group of bro podcasters and YouTubers who played a key role in President Trump winning the election.
Alex Clark pounced back at The Guardian, writing on X, "The Guardian is slamming me, Britt Hugo Boom, I'm Brett Cooper, and Riley Gaines for allegedly advocating for women to all be thin, fertile, and Republican. You know what? Hell yeah." Riley Gaines wrote on X, "The alternative is fat, infertile, and Democrat. I know which I'm choosing."
Well, here we are, Amber, in our usual customary social discussion, which I actually always enjoy. I have some things to say about this, as you might imagine, but I'm not at all going to go first in a discussion of the womanosphere. So I assume you approve of many of these podcasters and other media influencers.
Yeah, look, I listen to a lot of them. I think it's great. I think we should want America to be healthy. We should want women to be fertile. I don't think these are bad goals to try to achieve. And a lot of this stems from the fact that we have this weird feminist movement over the past 5 to 10 years that has been celebrating obesity through the so-called body positivity movement, the girl boss movement from the late 2000s, that has led to women being unhappier than ever. I mean, if we just look at the statistics, we see that women's happiness has been declining, their fulfillment, their feeling that they have purpose in their life has been declining. The rates at which young women are on SSRIs and anxiety medication has skyrocketed over the past several years. And I think these are all worthy things to be looking at and talking about for women to see that there is an alternative to that. I do take issue with the Guardian's characterization of these women as advocating for submissive homemakers as the only lifestyle that's available to women. These women all obviously work. I know Alex Clark is not married, works really hard on her podcast. Brittany Hugo Boom is married and has children, but also runs Evie magazine. So I don't think these women are saying that it's an all or nothing approach, but what they're advocating for is getting away from the idea that a career is necessarily the path to fulfillment for women and offering the alternative of a lot of women do want to stay home with their kids, or they want to have family as the number one thing in their life that is providing them fulfillment and purpose. And perhaps the sort of myopic focus on women in the workforce has made that job seem less appealing.
I think that one of the questions that I have about this topic, and it is not one that I'm expert in, as you might guess, is that is it purely about affirming more traditional or conservative choices as valid and as things that should not be mocked or denigrated? Or is it about suggesting that those areas of life or that pattern of life is superior to other models of life for women? Because on the one hand, I absolutely don't care if somebody wants to live a more trad wife kind of life and be conservative and church going and be the homemaker while the husband is the provider. That's fine. If that is what is appealing to a particular person, by all means, go ahead. What I worry about somewhat is rhetoric that seems to suggest that that is the template to which women should aspire. I think that is not. That's a template that people can choose, and if they wish to choose a template that is radically different from that, that is fine with me as well, as long as they are not infringing upon the rights of anyone else. So I think the skepticism from the Liberal side would more be about whether this is raising these conservative values as something to which all women should aspire, or to which women are somehow less feminine or whatever if they don't aspire to that.
I think what the liberal media misses in this conversation is that they have been advocating for the elevation of working women over homemakers. And if you just talk to women who were stay-at-home moms in the 90s and 2000s, they felt like they didn't get much respect, and their stories were not represented in women's lifestyle magazines or in fashion magazines, and it was all about the sort of high-powered career woman. And so I think it's just trying to rebalance the scales a bit to make sure that the stay-at-home mom or the woman who does choose a more traditional lifestyle is valued on the level that fashion magazines value the working woman. And so I see that as definitely a worthy goal. And I would also say, you know, from my experience growing up reading fashion magazines, I saw that the lifestyle that was put on the pedestal was the one where you have to be a girl boss and you have to basically be a man in your sensibilities to be considered feminist or worthy of praise in women's lifestyle and fashion magazines. And what I mean by that is that in the 2000s, fashion magazines really went all in on two things, one of which is the career aspect, which we've discussed, but also on the idea that women can find empowerment through sexual promiscuity through hookup culture. And a lot of women now are abstaining from sex entirely or keeping sex for committed relationships or even for marriage because they found out pretty quickly that hookup culture does a lot of damage to their psyche. It makes them feel bad about themselves, and they can't engage in one-night stands or quick hookups the way men can and move on from it in an emotionally healthy manner. And that's just the way that we're biologically hardwired to be. Women's brains release all kinds of bonding chemicals when we have sex with a man, and so it makes it harder for us to just have a short fling and move on. I've heard so many cases from friends who get together with guys who tell them they're not looking for anything long term. It's just a friends with benefits situation, and they tell themselves that they can do it, and then they end up getting attached. That happens more often than not. And so I think, the liberal media sphere of fashion and lifestyle magazines has really tried to push women into a lifestyle that really does not benefit them mentally, emotionally, physically, and has created a lot of lasting damage.
You know, I guess we have perhaps different, what would you say, female friends with different worldviews. Because, I know from women that I'm friends with that there are people who do enjoy sex for its own sake and do not think that that needs to take place within the confines of a established relationship and see that as something that is enjoying their own sexuality. And I think if that is how you feel, that is how you should act. And I think if that's not how you feel, you shouldn't feel press-ganged into it. Which brings me to my sort of broader point, really, Amber, which is that I think in a lot of these issues, what you see to my eyes is the pendulum swinging over a very long period of time. So some of the culture that elevated, for example, women in career roles or women taking a more assertive view to their own sex lives came as a reaction to a more traditional, or some would say old-fashioned view that enjoying sex was somehow bad, for example, or that it was inappropriate for women to have careers outside the home. I am not blind to the argument that that process may well have gone to such an extreme that women who do remain at home or do not like hookup culture felt marginalized by the dominant narrative. And so I guess that's why on one level I'm kind of relaxed about some of these things that The Guardian is so offended about. I think that the reason these podcasters or the more conservative magazines get an audience is because they find, presumably, the women to whom those values appeal more. And that's fine. But what I'm against is the idea of suggesting that it is wrong for women to make different choices, so long, of course, as those choices are consensual and fully informed.
Yeah, and I take your point that obviously third-wave feminism arose out of a particular backlash to traditional values, but I think you also correctly identified that it went to such an extreme that it did marginalize a lot of women who wanted a different way. And on the point about hookup culture, I mean, I'm not strictly arguing from anecdotal evidence. The New York Times has done studies on this. It's been well covered by mainstream media, actually, and I think to their credit, that Gen Z in particular is opting out of hookup culture because of the way that it leaves them feeling used. On TikTok, you'll see this trend identified through terms like, quote, boy sobriety or dry dating. And this is coming from liberal women on TikTok, mind you, not conservative trad wife culture, but who have taken a different approach to dating. And we also see that young people are having less sex than ever. I think there's multiple reasons for that, but part of it is probably because of women turning away from hookup culture. And so that's a identifiable trend, not just one that, you know, I hear from my friends.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but I guess I would take issue with some of the more generalizing language that you're using. I mean, you described an entire generation there and said that hookup culture leaves them feeling used. Presumably,
well, the ones who use the terms like boy sobriety and dry dating,
right,
is what I meant, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. But I mean, presumably there are lots of women within that generation for whom hookup culture is an exciting way to express their sexuality, and that's fine too. I'm very laissez-faire about this stuff in terms of people behaving in whatever way is appropriate to them. What I'm against is a template being imposed upon people that they feel they have to confine themselves to, or sort of shear off parts of their psyche in order to fit into.
Yeah, and I guess my argument is that template that you're talking about, that overgeneralization, was actually created by the liberal media about how women should behave. And so to me, the conservative outlets that are popping up to offer an alternative are trying to dismantle that template.
Fair enough. That's always a good discussion. I always enjoy these chats, Amber.
Me too.
So that does it for us today on Rising. Be sure to like, share and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.